And the first organ of the CNS is your brain. There's your brain. And the one thing about the brain, we always, when we look at the brain, we're just always familiar with this part right here, but we don't realize that there's other structures to the brain. It starts with that big bulge right here, right? This one, this stalk is your spinal cord, but there's bulges. The bulge is already part of the brain. So there's other parts of the brain. Let's see how our nervous system is formed first. So during the embryonic period, it's just nothing but from the germ cells, the ectoderm part, this one, I'm just showing you how it forms, okay? So it's just increased cell division. But how your nervous tissue, the nervous system forms, is it divides, keeps dividing around a central cavity. You see? The central cavity is referred to as ventricle, okay? So here, divide, just divides around. And so then when it's done dividing, it looks like this. See, all of those cavities there just divides around that one. And it starts looking like this. You're not required to know this parts right here, both. This is just the primitive, and this is how the progression. And when we're born, our brain looks like that, okay? Before we study the different structures of the brain, we want to be familiar first with the structures that support and protect our brain. Do you remember? They don't divide anymore, right? What's absent? What organelle is absent? The centrioles. So when they get injured, the injury is permanent. It cannot be replaced by new neurons. It's just scar tissue. So they must be protected. So can you give me structures that protect your brain and spinal cord?
The cranium is going to be
Cranium. Oh, very good. So we're going to go to that one. So you said craniums, right? If you write cranium, so one is bone. So in the test, I think you will be asked maybe sometimes, give 3, give 2. If you wrote cranium or skull, and then number 2 will be your vertebral column, that's just considered one answer. That's bone. Then number 2, you said meninges. Very good. Meninges are coverings around your brain, okay? So this is a top that contains our brain. After Thursday, we are going to also start opening up, dissecting your brain, just so you have everything. You're going to dissect the cat, you're going to dissect the brain, and then the week after that, I'm going to give you the eye, so you just have everything that you will need for your lab exam number 3, okay? So there's your brain. This is a sheep brain, okay? But what covers this normally is this one. There's a wrapper like that. This is the meninges. And I want you to appreciate, look at, pull it, it's very tough. And that's how tough the protection, this is 3 layers. In fact, when I pull this one, you will see this, if you come closely, there's still a shininess to it. The shiny part is still meninges. That's the innermost layer called the pia. So there's 3 layers to the meninges. The dura, the arachnoid, and the pia. So you need to know those 3 layers from superficial to deep, okay? And you just saw the meninges. What is the composition you think of the meninges? Yes, protein, but what fiber? Very good. Collagen fiber, connective tissue, mainly collagen fiber. You remember your bone is collagen, isn't it? Also, right? So look at here, your meninges, see, when it gets to the foramen magnum right here, which is the opening of your bone, opening of your cranium, the big opening, the meninges actually just fuses with the bone. So here it becomes bone, here meninges. Can you picture that? Then it goes down to continue on, and it covers the entire CNS, meaning the brain and the spinal cord, all the way down here. Your meninges, see, will cover right here and then it will fuse. And in fact, all the way down here, it fuses all the way over here, right here. So by the time it gets down here, it will fuse with, at the sacrum. It's like it's holding it tight so that there's no wiggle room for your spinal cord or your brain. It stays put. Can you picture in your head? Okay? And those three layers, you should be able to know the three layers from superficial to deep. So it's like this. See? There's your bone. So there's your bone. The most superficial layer is called the dura mater. And then the next layer is called the arachnoid mater, this one right here. And then the innermost layer is the pia mater right here. From superficial to deep, dura, arachnoid, pia. And the pia, when you peel the meninges in your brains, not your brains, but the sheep brains, that when you peel it, you won't be able to peel the pia mater. It goes into every groove that you will see. That's how protective the meninges are. Okay? And I said it's continuous with the spinal cord. So the meninges in the spinal cord area, we will call it spinal meninges. In the brain, you call it cranial meninges. You heard of meningitis? It's an emergency. And it always, well, in general, meningitis begins in your spinal cord. But because it's continuous, it gets spread very quickly. So that's why you admit them to the ER, you see? Okay? And one of the key, so meningitis is swelling or inflammation of the meninges. I just told you that the meninges over here fuses with the bone, right? I just told you that. And right here in the sacrum, it's like there's a ligament that will hold it right here. It anchors it right there. So a very, very unique symptom of people suffering from meningitis, imagine, picture, it's swelling, right? It's inflamed. You have them lay down on the bed and on the table, you bend their head like that, or have them bend their knee, they will scream in pain because you're trying to stretch and it's swollen and it's inflamed. That's a sure sign that they have meningitis. Okay? Then they have projectile vomiting too. But you have them do that bend. It's just pick, anatomically you can explain it, right? Now no problem, it's not inflamed. But once that gets inflamed, have them do that, they will scream in pain. Okay? Okay. You need to know that there are spaces, okay, between the dura and the bone. This is called your epidural space. And then between the dura and the arachnoid is called subdural space right there. Then between the arachnoid and the pia mater, you call that subarachnoid space. See? Subdural is under the dura, subarachnoid under the arachnoid. Then there's your epidural space. It's above the dura. So when you do your epidural anesthesia, that's where you're introducing it. It's just when you get to the first part where there's the gift, it's right there. Okay. When you try to get CSF, the arachnoid matter, in the subarachnoid space right here is where you find the CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. This is where it's found, in the subarachnoid space. The arachnoid matter is very vascular. That's where blood vessels are found. So you can tell, you heard of epidural bleed, subdural bleed, subarachnoid bleed. What do you think is more dangerous? Epidural, subarachnoid, subdural bleed. Sub what? Subarachnoid bleed. Very good. Because that is subdural, subarachnoid, but subarachnoid is the most dangerous. Epidural is just up here, right? So this is the bloody one. So people with subarachnoid bleed, they're usually the ones who lose consciousness and it's very hard for them to wake up. Whereas you see some people, they lose consciousness, they wake up, they're okay. Must be epidural only. Then the subdural, they lose consciousness, they wake up, and then you go home, and then after a while, they pass out again. Must be subarachnoid. Just knowing the anatomy, you can figure out. Okay, so we know that this meninges, I like to ask that in the lab exam. I'll just have the meninges on the table, on a tray identified. Then you're going to write meninges. Then I'll say, this structure is made up of how many layers? You're going to say 3 layers. Then the question will be, name those layers from superficial to deep. So you have the dura, the arachnoid, and the pia. Okay? Then this structure is continuous in the brain and spinal cord. True or false? Yes, that's true. In the spinal cord, you call it spinal meninges. In the brain, you call it cranial meninges. Okay? So we have meninges that protects. They're very important. You see how they anchor the brain and the spinal cord. How about CSF? Don't you think CSF also is very important to protect, right? So here is your how CSF is formed, your cerebrospinal fluid. So you remember that the brain will have cavities or ventricles, okay? And this part right here, they're just highlighting this part over here. So you see, there's a blood vessel lining the cavity. So this part, this green structure, is this part where I have my pen, my marker. So the green is this one. These are your ependymal cells. And where there's ependymal cells, there's blood vessels that run through it. And the blood vessel is called choroid plexus. It's called choroid plexus. It's nothing but capillaries. So what's flowing through this choroid plexus? What's present in this blood vessel? It's blood. Yes, very good. It's blood, right? And it's supposed to contain nutrients. So how do you push them out? Your own blood pressure. Because your nutrients, they don't have legs to move from here to here. So it's your own blood pressure that will push the nutrients. See, that's why it's important to always be adequately hydrated to maintain that pressure. This part right here above the heart is going against gravity. So you need normal pressure for your brain. That's why the first one to suffer if you have low blood pressure is your brain. You pass out against gravity. You understand? So if you picture, it's constantly trickling. Every time you have your heart, it's pushing and it's trickling. The fluid here in the ventricle. What do you call the fluid now? Once it has escaped the blood, you call that CSF. And it will what is the CSF carrying? It's carrying nutrients to nourish my neurons. What is it delivering? See, there's an arrow back in. So the waste, these are metabolically active cells, right? Your neurons. So they're generating waste. So the waste will have to go back into the blood. And where is this going to drain? The arachnoid villi right here, which are just veins. And they will eventually return that dirty CSF to your heart, and the heart will pump it to the kidneys, so you pee it out. So don't you think that the CSF is very important in protecting your brain and spinal cord? Don't you think so? Right? Okay? Okay. How about blood-brain barrier? You remember that? Your astrocytes? Don't you think they're also protective, your blood-brain barrier? Right? They're also very important in protecting your brain and spine. No, only your brain and spinal cord, the astrocytes. They create a barrier between the interstitial and the nervous tissue, between whatever is circulating in your blood. But you remember that there's breaks in that blood-brain barrier. Like right here, there must be no blood-brain barrier right here in your ventricles, right? Because you have CSF flow, so there must be no astrocytes right there. So it's not 100% if creating a barrier. Okay? So we will stop our lecture here on Thursday after your lab exam. We're gonna start studying the different parts of the brain and what is their specific function. Okay? Okay. So use the rest of the time period to review for your lab exam on Thursday.